Now, who else would we ask to put the events in China over the last couple of days in their proper context but that great friend of the show and much loved Chinese commentator, Li JingJing. Li, welcome back to the show. It's been too long since we saw you. You have a lot of fans, I can tell, from social media. The sun rose in the east this week. I know literally it always does, but metaphorically it really rose to its highest point, its zenith this week, wouldn't you say?
Thank you, George, for having me back. Really, and as a Chinese person who grew up in really the best time of China. Like I mentioned many times, when I was a kid, China wasn't like that at all. It was very impoverished, and we didn't have many the luxurious like flushing toilets when I was a kid. But like, me myself in my 30s already witnessed these dramatic changes and feel so honored. And I think the whole world probably watched the military parade happen just hours ago in Beijing. I was one of the audiences and a journalist covering the event. I was at Tiananmen Square watching the whole military parade. I'm so proud because remember in 1949 when People's Republic of China was just founded, we didn't even have enough aircrafts to fly over Tiananmen. So our former premier Zhou Enlai just said, if we don't have enough planes, just let them fly twice. But nowadays, we don't need to let planes fly twice. We have enough weapons and military equipment to maintain the safety, the peace of Chinese people, to make sure the horrible war crimes like the Japanese invasion, Japanese fascist forces invasion during World War II will never happen again. So this is like a truly, how to say, proud moment for me as a young Chinese grew up in the best era of China, George. So thank you for saying the sun is rising from the east.
Well, not a lot of people of your age are fully aware of the atrocity that was the Japanese invasion of China. 20 million minimum. People were slaughtered. There was mass rape. Indeed, the whole city of what we called at the time Nanking, the rape of Nanking, for someone my age, was a part of the Second World War's iconography. It was as meaningful as the pictures of the concentration camps at Buchenwald and the rest. But nowadays, we're supposed to love the Japanese and hate the Chinese. How did it come to that?
Thank you for pointing that out, George. It's shocking to me so few people in the Western world, either in Europe or United States, know about the Japanese fascist forces' atrocities in World War II. Because maybe for many Europeans, the World War II started in 1939. For Americans, the World War II started in 1941. But actually, the World War II started in Asia, in China, years before that. It started in China in 1931, September the 18th, when Japanese forces invaded northeast China and installed puppet regime. And so the World War II was 14 years for Chinese. During the 14 years, China lost 35 million military and civilian casualties. And like their Japanese fascist forces committed so many atrocities that I don't think any atrocities can even compare to that level of atrocity. The Nanjing massacre was one of the things, and within 1 week, Japanese fascist forces slaughtered 300,000 people in one city, and they committed such massacres across China in many cities. And also they did human experimentations, biological warfare, installed Unit 731 and launched biological warfares. I know nowadays a lot of people from other countries like to say why Chinese people love to drink hot water. There was a historical reason because one of the reasons is the Japanese forces. They spread all these germs and across the villages in China. So basically, all the water in the rivers, in the wells were contaminated. So our grandparents learned that we have to boil the water to kill all the germs in the water. And there are still surviving victims, but suffered physical still suffering physical pain from the biological warfare they launched. They also did human experimentations on Chinese people, so to improve their medical levels. But we have many good movies about this to tell the stories of World War II, the Nanjing massacre, and some people from the Western world or Japan start to tell Chinese people, "Oh, why didn't you guys get over this? It's such a long time ago." It's so hypocritical. First, I think Western countries, European countries, tell their people what happened during World War II and don't do the Holocaust again every year. They do that, remind people don't do that all the time. But when Chinese people, Asian people start to say that, what we went through, they start to, oh, get over it, decades ago. One thing like make Japanese fascist forces different from German fascist forces is German apologized, and they have this Holocaust memorial to remind people to make sure that memory imprinted in your brain don't repeat it again. But Japanese fascist forces never apologized to Chinese people, to all the Asian countries they invaded and occupied, and they recruited sex slaves from China, Korea, Philippines, Singapore, Vietnam, all across Southeast Asia. So, but like they never paid a penny. They never apologized to all these victims to this day. And they also try to remove that history from their textbooks. So the young generations in Japan don't even know what happened during World War II. And like it's also shocking that people in Western countries don't know this history because we Chinese, I grew up in China. I learned what happened to Britain, to Europe, in my high school history textbooks. I know what happened. I know the Holocaust. I know what Germany did. I don't know what Britain did, Dunkirk, and everything. But like Western countries don't know what happened here. But China, Britain, US, we were allies. We were allies fighting against the fascist. But like it's so being forgotten. What we did were forgotten. Like we were. That's why we were one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, because that's the post World War II order, how it was built. So clearly, there's some forces trying to erase that part of history. To erase so they can easily paint the Chinese as the evil force and the Japanese are the kawaii, cute forces to let go of the crimes. And also, I mentioned the biological warfares and human experimentations. Those war criminals never suffered any punishment. Why? The U.S. actually covered up. Of course, the U.S. was our allies during the World War II, but also they led the king of the Japan freed from the punishment because they want that data. They took that data and cover up the crimes. And some even say the younger generations in Japan don't have anything to do with World War II, so why criticize them? The thing is, to today, any people who want to speak out what happened during World War II because so many things were covered, anyone dare to speak out the crimes, they would face death threats by some forces, mostly from Japan. We can see recently a good friend to Chinese people, an American who donated a war crime photo album to Chinese government. He's just American who was selling antiques, and he found this very important, valuable photo albums. And ever since then, he received constant death threats. And a very famous Chinese American writer, Iris Chan, who wrote the book The Rape of Nanking, ever since she published that book, she also received death threats, constant threats, physical threats, nonstop from the forces from around the world. So if the current generations have nothing to do with the past, why are they attacking these people who are just simply telling the true history? Because someone trying to erase the real World War II history. I also want to remind everyone that Soviet Union was also made great contributions. Soviet Union lost 27 million people to fight against fascists, and many, because of the geopolitical conflict, I think many in the Western world also forget that.
They do indeed, and Gayatri and I were punished severely by the British media for attending the 80th victory celebration in Moscow. And one of the things that was obvious about yesterday was that several of the people that Japanese fascism invaded, subjugated, slaughtered, were now with you and were with Xi Jinping on the podium. Thinking of Indonesia, for example, their president was there. Thinking of Kim Jong-un, the Korean leader, who was there. But there were many noticeable absentees. And the most important were the Western political leaders. Why wasn't Trump there? Why wasn't Macron there? Why wasn't Starmer there? After all, they were celebrating a victory of which we were a part. Why were they not there?
It shows the current global, let me put this. So I think it's like I mentioned, they try to erase and twist the history. But also what we saw yesterday at the military parade is also a symbol of the currently clearly even faster shifting world order. So at the military parade, at the commemoration, we have 26 foreign leaders coming here to attending the China's commemoration with President Xi Jinping. And most of the countries were victims of the fascism in World War II, say Vietnam, North Korea, Russia, Malaysia, Indonesia. So it's very reasonable that these leaders came to China to commemorate the victory in World War II. And also, I think it's funny that whenever you will hear some Western media or Western government saying, China is the bad guy because China has better relationship with all their neighbors. That's one of their narratives. But look at the picture coming from the commemoration. All our neighbors came here. Basically, all our neighbors are here. Their leaders are here attending the commemoration, standing right next to our president. Clearly, we have a good relationship. I think the only leader, the head of the government didn't come is South Korea. I understand why. They have a new head of the government of the country who just visited the United States. So, and also because of the conflict between North and South Korea, maybe he hesitated, but South Korea also sent a high-level officials to attend as a representative. So basically, all our neighbors came. So clearly, we have good neighbors. And the U.S. tried to divide China from India, tried to divide China from Vietnam, and tried to divide China from all their neighbors for so long. But whatever they did achieved the opposite effect. As you mentioned earlier in the show, just a few days ago, we have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, nearby Beijing, and India's Modi came here, and both leaders, Chinese president and the Indian and leader, sent very positive messages. Chinese President Xi Jinping said, "China and India, we are not rebels. We are cooperation partners. So we need to put aside our differences and seek common interests and seek the best way to develop our relations." This is what's happening now. And it's the best message to the whole global South, because this is what we need if we want to change the unfair global order. We need the unity of the global South countries, developing countries. We need to build a united front with all our friends from the global South. And clearly this is happening. Remember, Trump just threw 50% tariffs on Brazil and on Vietnam. And what happened just a few months ago? Vietnam also joined the BRICS in Brazil. So whoever Trump is trying to bully, these countries, no, they are not. They're don't boss me around. I have my fellow good friends. So all these countries, it's facilitating the pace of other countries joining the other regional organizations like BRICS SCO, Belt and Road Initiative, to seek a reasonable business partner to develop and change the unfair global order.
Well, they were caught on a hot mic discussing how it might be possible for this generation to live to 150. All of our viewers are right now saying, we hope Li JingJing lives 100 years and more. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and for that splendid survey of the sunlit scene from China.